welcome to hour number 2 on a Monday with hashtag Daily K's host, Peter B. Tired of just scratching the surface of Korea? Want to get deep in the weeds?
We unpack everything about Korea through its history.
On Now and Then.
With David.
It's a Monday morning, it is a bit rainy and drizzly outside, so what better than a couple of Brits to be welcoming you on a Monday morning. Good morning, David.
Good morning. It's not a little bit rain, it's like the skies are grey, it's dark, it's coming
miserable
down.
Out there, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really changed.
And I just went to the bathroom in the break, and when I came out this morning, it wasn't that cold. I saw the forecast on my phone, and it seemed that the temperatures were actually going to drop throughout the day as it rains more, and the breeze through the toilet just now was really chilly. I need a thicker jacket when I go outside, I feel.
Yeah, it's getting there.
It's slowly turning into winter. Have you had a good week since we last saw you, David?
Absolutely. Yeah, I've been keeping up with everything. Happy, healthy. I've been in the music studio, been doing my thing.
Ooh.
So, yeah, everything's going really... I'm really happy, thank you.
Yeah, we are deliberately avoiding football talk because the Liverpool listeners as well have got that out of their system. Just leave that, right?
There was no football.
Many people, including Jay Lee, who's on board, really curious because I've just said it's going to be something animal related today, and Jay is a big fisherman. So he's saying there better be fish talked about today, but I don't know if we can guarantee that. What is the topic?
Fish talk in part 3.
Oh,
the fish talk is coming up. Part 2, part 3 is coming up.
Nice.
Today we're going to talk about animals. We're going to talk about animal rights more specifically, which is a subject that's been in the news recently. Before we talk about animal rights, I'll share this picture with you.
Oh,
this is my wife, Hyunjung.
Oh,
and there she's holding 3 of our puppies.
What?
We had 8 of them.
Oh my goodness.
Our beagle Yangpa gave birth to 8 puppies, and we raised them, and then we found all homes. Can you imagine what it was like to have 8 puppies running around your house, feeding them, cleaning them? It was like it was an incredible experience.
I bet the kids loved it. Were they around?
They weren't around.
Oh,
this was
I
before
see.
the kids, and so perhaps that inspired us. But that was a really great memory to sort of do that. That was a wonderful thing.
They are so adorable, puppies. Like any little baby animals, like chicks and kittens. I think everybody's heart melts. And the listeners, long-time listeners to the show, some of them call me a bit grumpy because I don't have a massive soft spot for animals. I've got to be honest. I didn't grow up in the UK with a dog or a cat like many of my friends.
Right.
And so I was just like, yeah, animals, meh. Humans, I prefer. That was my kind of way of thinking. But definitely animal rights is a big topic and something really important. Even if I'm not a complete animal lover, I can recognise that.
Well, let's try to find out why we're talking about animal rights today. So we always try to relate the history to modern contemporary events, what's going on in the news. One of the big stories in the last couple of weeks in South Korea has been that the President Moon Jae-in of South Korea has come out and said that it's time to reevaluate the nation's attitude, laws towards the consumption of dog meat.
Oh, really?
Now dog meat has been traditional in Korea. It's been for a long time. You can go to restaurants and eat dog soup, poshintang, and things like this. And it's generally amongst the older generation. You won't find a lot of young people going out for a dog soup at lunchtime. But it is there in Korean society, and you will see restaurants around.
Yeah.
And so the president came out and said that it might be time to start moving forward and putting this traditional practice behind us. And that was an interesting comment because it sort of divided a bit of opinion. However, most of the respondents in a lot of surveys said that they believe like up to 78% the sale of dog meat should be prohibited. There should be consumption bans. So the president's comments and moves were largely supported. There were some involved in the traditional elements of society that sort of pushed back against it a little bit.
Yeah, I find that you don't find those restaurants in places like Gangnam and Apgujeong, the trendy hubs where young people hang out, but often in countryside areas you'll see the sign for poshintang. I don't think poshintang itself means it must be dog, but any kind of restorative health food, right?
Yeah, that's the body energy type soup, isn't it? Yeah, absolutely.
And so it's not like on the menu. And many young people, I think have never had it and would not consider it. But you're right, it's a bit of a generational thing. And it's interesting that the president comes out and says that. He's known for like raising dogs as well. I think we saw a photo earlier.
We did, and they were dogs that were given to him by North Korea.
Oh.
You know, they were special. And so now they've found a home as well, I believe. So the president, unlike yourself, Peter, is a big dog lover. But his comments seem largely supportive. There's another story that's getting a lot of attention.
Yeah.
Now, in Seoul, there's an aquarium. We'll call it that it's in L-World. Otte.
Yes.
And there is a beluga whale in there called Bella.
Yes.
Came from Russia 2014 with two other whales, and many people have flocked there to see it and stand in awe of these amazing creatures, these mammals. Two of them, there were three originally, two of them have already died, dying at the age of 5 and 12 inside captivity. And these whales normally live for 40 years.
Oh, goodness. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and so and a lot of people are looking at this and going, this is unacceptable. We're putting this in the middle of a city for people's enjoyment, and there's been a lot of talk. The company have said that they're going to find a sanctuary for it, a wildlife sanctuary, and then release it. It hasn't happened yet. There's all this talk, but it still remains there.
Yeah, there has been. We mentioned it on the show. It must have been 6 months or a year ago that they were trying to find a way to do it. Because I think it's not cheap to do it, and you have to find the right place to do it.
Right.
As well. But it is the star attraction. I'm wondering what they're going to fill that aquarium up with, but that's a secondary worry.
Well, it perhaps also means that there's money and profit involved, because so many people go there. And if you look on the internet, so many people have photos just like the one we showed online of standing there doing those things.
Absolutely. We had a 1-year membership to that place, and we went when there were 2, and then I returned and there was 1. And I didn't think there was any mention that one had passed away. So I guess they weren't promoting that fact in the aquarium.
Right.
But the kids loved it as well. But of course, its safety and its health is more important. And like generally speaking, I think we've talked about this trend for years now, pet ownership kind of increasing and going through the roof all the time in Korea.
It is, and there's been so many stories related to it and coming to terms, because Korea does everything so quickly.
Yes.
It's that compressed modernity, this rapid change in society, which it's done so well. But 15 million pet owners in South Korea. And so you see all these sort of grooming shops. There are so many people with pets now, and all the extras that come along with that in a capitalist society. But what we're also seeing is an increasing abandonment of animals. So every year the number of pets being abandoned rises. Every year the number of police complaints about animal abuse, they're rising every year. So according to one sort of global animal protection welfare agency, they rank countries on a scale of A to G according to how well that country protects animals. South Korea, D.
All right,
not
great.
It's not great. I mean, if your kids came home with a D, you'd be like, well, it's not great, but there's room for improvement.
Yeah, you're not the worst of the bunch, but still there is concern. And I think because the pet owning culture, I'm sure, like my wife's generation, they had maybe a dog at grandma's and stuff, but it wasn't seen as a pet in the same way as the West, right?
I think that's a really important thing.
Yeah, I think some were raised for food as well, to be eaten at a later date and things like that.
And that's the same. I mean, then we get into these bigger questions about, well, is there a difference between a dog and a chicken? And, you know, some are cuter. Is it different if they have 4 legs or different eyes? But they're all still living creatures that have a desire to live and to exist. And so we do kind of, as a society, or I should say perhaps as different cultures, we project different values and images onto different animals. In some cultures, we'll eat certain animals and not, and then in others we won't. So it's all different around the world, right?
Yeah, and I think we mentioned this on K-Stream, just the point to finish up before a song break, that they were trying to change or looking to change the legal status of animals, especially things like dogs, right?
Yeah.
But at the moment, is it true that they're still classified not as animals and individuals in their own right?
Yeah, it's a very tricky one. So Article 98 of the Civic Code says that creatures are subjects of humans, right? So humans can use them, trade them, and not do what they want. There are still certain responsibilities, but animals don't have their own status, right? So they're under the protection of humans. If you compare other countries such as Germany, Austria, Switzerland, they recognize animals as having a special legal status. They're not humans, but they're not purely objects either, but they have a special existence of animals. In South Korea, animals are still objects and therefore come under the jurisdiction of human interaction and human behavior.
Yeah, I think that's why in the past it's been hard to prosecute people for certain abuses against animals, right?
Yeah.
Tropic Girl K, maybe the most here, saying the way dogs are kept in cages without a life, it's heartbreaking to see. It's awful how they're kept and bred for their meat. But thankfully, Korea's taste for dog meat is waning. High tide to shut them down. Yeah, I think it was a bigger issue in like the 90s. You used to hear it on the news, even in the UK. And then it has died down because really the consumption has fallen off a cliff, I think, the past few decades. I'm really interested to see how it turns out after that President Moon Jae-in and his speech there as well.
Absolutely. And I guess the question is there, Peter, whether we should let that consumption just slowly die down as it is with generations, or whether we should enforce and push it to close.
Yeah.
Because there's a difference thing there. If you do force and push it, there will be resistance, but it does happen quicker. So a very difficult decision for those in charge. Jay Lee says, best dog I ever had was a German Shepherd and Chow Chow mix. That sounds fantastic.
Wow.
Chow Chow is the one that looks like kind of a lion, I think has the big mane, if I'm correct.
And a little mix.
Yeah, and a mix between that and a German Shepherd. Jay Lee also says beluga whales in Connecticut, USA. Loves music, very famous.
Yeah, the beluga whales, when I saw them as a pair, they looked much happier, and they'd be playing with all the toys in there in quite unbelievable ways. They had like hoops and balls and their control of it underwater, despite being like a buoyant object. It kind of made me sad at the same time because you realise how clever the animals are, right?
Yeah.
Lady Nova says there are some zoos that take good care of their animals and make sure to feed them regularly, clean their exhibits. I went to one near me and the animals had plenty of room to roam around. And I think that's what they tried to do at that L World Aquarium. Like, it's a huge tank, really deep, but it's still nothing compared to what they have in the wild, right?
No. And even if it was size, it's not about the size. It's about the interactivity of the environment, isn't it? I think Silver Granny and her Grumpy Gnome, by the way, that's a fantastic name. I think that might be the first time I've read this. Congratulations on your name. Says that I knew that Chinese used dog meat, but I was unaware that Korea did too. Yeah, it was...
I think, as you know, we talked about Korea kind of, if you see it in a cold kind of way, really tending to its image and being aware of that from decades ago. And I think the dog meat issue was one that they kind of cultivated to stop that being promoted about the country. But I think fairly as well, because like David and I have said, it's really hard to come by these days. It's not something you see too regularly. We've also got Jarl who says, if I wanted to have a pet, I would have a fish. I keep trying to convince my kids of that, but they're like, we can't pet it, we can't do anything with it. We bought one for a year. They looked at it maybe 5 or 6 times a month, and so we just let it back out into a stream, and hopefully it's living its best life now.
The aquariums look good, though.
Yes.
And you get the little castles and bubbles and things like that. I like the aquariums. Nikolai says, are animal rights strictly limited to domestic animals, or does it include wild animals to a limited extent?
Ooh.
Nikolai, stay tuned, because all the law is coming out.
Okay, and one last message here from Miok Stella saying, hi David, great to see your wife and puppy's picture this morning. I enjoy your segments, even on other shows. Great to have you here on Daily K. We're contractually obliged to say this is the best segment you'll find David on. Moving onwards and upwards then into a bit of history.
Yeah, absolutely. So we tried to say that different cultures have different attitudes towards animals, and they'll place certain significance on some. And so in the West, there has been this idea dog is a man's best friend, and they are companions, and they're domesticated wolves and come from there. They don't exist in nature in that sense, right?
Yeah.
But different cultures will have had different perceptions of animals, and that's why perhaps sometimes we need to be a little bit more understanding with, say, traditional elements where they have eaten dog and other animals.
Yeah.
Now, in Korea, they have their own view of animals, and they've been largely seen as utility. One thing that I will say is that fascinated me, the pig is associated with money and as a symbol of luck and fortune, especially wealth.
Yeah, if you have a pig dream, you're meant to go out and buy a lottery ticket and whatnot. And I don't think like we particularly respect and revere the actual pig. We appreciate the meat and eat that quite a lot, right? But it's not like a pet or anything.
No,
right?
Absolutely. It's viewed differently. But that idea of a pig symbolizing wealth and the dreams as well, and also the dreams, how do you say this politely on radio? poo.
Poo dreams, yes.
Yeah, poo dreams also very lucky here.
So apparently a pig in its own waste is like, you're going to win the lottery that week, 100%.
Buy the tickets, yeah. That's just how it is here.
Yes.
And another one would be the zodiac. So in the West growing up, it was all based on constellations of the stars, and there would be these symbols such as Aquarius and Virgo. And I was born in September, so in the West I was Virgo, which is a symbol of virginity and pureness and innocence. And I was like, that's really cool. I was very proud of my star sign.
Is it an animal as well, the Virgo? Because I'm a Leo, so that was blatantly a lion, right?
Yeah.
But some other ones not necessarily, right?
Probably an angel, Peter. Okay. You know, just look at me. It makes sense.
Oh, God.
But in Asia, especially in Northeast Asia, they do it by animals. And so you have an animal year. 2021, we're in the year of the ox.
Do you know what you are in this sign?
I do know what I
you?
am. And so I was so excited to find out my zodiac sign in this. And I thought I must be like a tiger, a dragon, right? You know, that's what I see myself as. I look down the list and I'm a chicken.
A chicken.
Yeah.
They've got not great connotations in the West for being wimpy, right? But I don't know if it's the same here, right? I don't think they're respected too much here, even.
I wake up early, which is pretty, you know, like...
Cock-a-doodle-doing.
Yeah, cock-a-ding.
I am a pig, to mention it, and so I was pretty unflattered by that when I saw it. But apparently each animal, just like the zodiacs in the West, they have their good and bad points, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just how they view them. So that's a nice one. Now, you mentioned a little bit earlier, Peter, about how these elements have developed over time, the idea of animals and the development. A huge thing we need to pay attention to here is the Seoul 1988 Olympics. And this was a huge moment for the country because when it was granted in 1981, South Korea was still under a military dictatorship.
Sure.
You know, it was a completely different world here. There was a lot of restrictions on speech and media and freedoms, and yet the Olympics were coming. The international community, the whole world would be coming to see South Korea. And it was one of the first times, perhaps since bar Mexico in 1972, where the Olympics had been in a country that was not, you know, on the process of development rather than fully developed.
Yeah, we were so proud of that fact, really looking forward to showing ourselves off to the world, right?
Rightly so as well. It created a huge amount of goodwill. Now, in the build-up to that, there was a lot of focus on the South Korean dog and cat meat market, and that the international community would come here, see dog and cat meat markets, because we don't see it these days, like you say. But at the time, it was much more visible. And so because the world was coming, that was a really important moment about changing the image of South Korea and making it, let's say, more comfortable for international visitors and people coming into the country.
Yeah, and like you said earlier, it's a really interesting debate, and I'm kind of on the fence about this because Korea seemed to like scramble to please those Western audiences. Maybe we could bunch it all together. Whereas, at the time I even used to think, well, we eat cows and chickens and there's intensive farming and they're in awful conditions as well. What's the difference with a dog? Because I never had a dog. I know pet lovers would always say, oh, no, it's very different. And I'd always say, no, it's still an animal, is it not? So if you're going to eat that meat that came from that farm, what's the difference here? And it would fall on deaf ears. You know, my British dog lovers would just be like, don't be ridiculous, Peter. But I guess it has really helped because it is hard to get over certain cultural hurdles, right? And I don't know if Korea took the right or wrong decision, but it has helped with boosting our image.
But you're right, it does seem a little bit like cultural imperialism, like a new form of colonialism, but culturally and coming through ideas. And I think you raise a really important point, Peter. Is there a difference between eating dog meat or pork or beef or things like this? To me, I don't think there is. And so I don't try to, you know, virtue signal too much about people that do eat dog because I eat all these other animals. And what's the difference between the animals? I mean, they're none of a lot of the cows, for example, they don't have a very good life. Okja was a very good movie in that regard.
Absolutely, seeing that. And I do accept criticism from people who are vegans, perhaps, because I know I shouldn't eat animals, to be honest, for the environmental reasons alone, right?
Yeah.
And then so if someone who doesn't eat any animals comes to me and says this, this, and this, I will accept that fully, right? But it's a different case when it's like animal A is okay, but B not okay.
I agree, but we need to let everybody have their say. And the Animal Protection Act, which came in 1991 in South Korea, just after the Olympics, so that 88 Olympics was a really important push. Now, when this Animal Protection Act in 1991, which is a huge historical first step for animal rights, comes in to promote the protection, the lives, the safety and the welfare of animals, the animals that it defined as falling under that included cattle, horses, pigs, dogs, cats, rabbits, ducks, goats, sheep, deer, foxes, minks.
Oh.
No fish.
No fish.
No reptiles.
Oh.
And so, for example, we might show you on the screen here, Noryangjing Fish Market. And I went there one day with my father-in-law. I went there incredibly hungover, which was a bad idea because I saw the way these fish were just pulled out of various creatures and then cut up. You know, they were live and then cut up. And I just started crying a little bit, weeping internally because I felt these are living, breathing things. Now, when South Korea developed this first 1991, it focused mainly on mammals, not on fish and not on reptiles. So that's how this conversation is developing over time.
Yeah, and like you'll see differences because outside restaurants there'll be live seafood, right? And then you just eat it without a blink of an eye.
Yeah.
And then at many beef and pig restaurants you'll see pictures, not real live pigs and cows. That's quite rare, I think, yes. But you'll see pictures of the cattle and then you'll be eating it. And it's just a different, I guess, culture that we've grown up in, right?
I'm in London.
I'm in Australia.
Tokyo. The Philippines.
Finland. Indonesia.
New York.
Arirang Radio.
Now live in Seoul.
Lady Nova saying, we used to have a few fish when I was in high school. One of the fish lived for a good 4 or 5 years. Yeah, and my friend had one good 10 years a goldfish lived, unless his mum was playing the old switcheroo when one of them passed away. But I'm sure I saw it and I believed it was the same one. But, you know, I think there's a maybe way of thinking, even in the West, that fish are maybe one level down in terms of their like ability to have memories and feel pain and stuff. And I don't know how accurate that is scientifically. Maybe we're just trying to tell us that.
I watched this documentary once called Finding Nemo.
Okay.
It's not a documentary.
They did have emotions there.
They did. Nikolai, here's a test for you, Peter. What's this from? Nikolai says, all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others.
Animal Farm.
Ding, ding, ding.
That's
well
the
done.
only one I've ever got right from your quizzes, David. And I think for the rest of eternity, that will be the remaining one.
Very good, Nikolai.
Siska's saying, I don't think I can have pets. I had fish before and they rest in peace now. I had chicks as well. They rest in peace as well. I don't dare to have a dog. Just better to play with my friends. And that was my thinking as a kid. I always used to think, I'm definitely going to outlive this animal. I didn't want that sadness. That was like part of the reason I didn't get pets.
Yeah, it's... Jarl says, I saw in Vietnam... I was just about to say, don't get married then. Jarl says, I saw in Vietnam, they sell dog meat. They hang the whole dog in the shop. Yep.
Again, different cultures, right? Because in many Chinese restaurants, you see the duck like hanging high there.
Yeah.
What's the difference? I really enjoy duck. And as we said in Korea, we have the live seafood often outside. We've got prawns galore, fish, some of them fairly sizable as well, waiting to be caught for you. Silver Granny says, I still eat meat, but not as much as I used to. And I always thank the animal for giving me their essence. Oh, that's a nice way of doing it. And it's one of those blind spots with humans, I think, especially meat eaters. Like, we know every argument should have us turn away from meat, but so many of us just don't, right? We just straight out don't.
Yeah. Some people in the chat, I was being sarcastic by saying Finding Nemo was a documentary, just to be clear.
Based loosely on a true story, perhaps.
Jay Lee says, as humans, we're top of the food chain. Yeah, that is correct. I will say this is an idea that's always fascinated me, is that every animal has a habitat in which it survives. So, for example, we know where birds live, we know where a lion can exist. But as humans, what is our natural habitat? Where do we flourish? Because if you take away the things that we have produced for ourselves, the clothes, the houses, the heating, these are all artificial things that we've made, and you put us as humans on the planet, where is our natural habitat?
Oh, It's a good question.
Perhaps it's very hard that we don't actually have one in our current form because unlike animals, we need to adapt to the world. Animals are kind of part of the world, aren't they?
Yeah, there is maybe a difference there. An interesting line to draw, right? Moving on then, part 3, looking more at some media and some activism. Because, with the boom in pet ownership, and we're talking about the majority of pet owners being good pet owners, really spending lots of money on their animals, I think there's a bigger focus the past maybe decade or so on animal rights.
Yeah. Just on spending money, I took my dog Yangpa, the beagle, to a grooming shop once. And, I used to walk Yangpa out and they brought it back and they'd shaved Yangpa, my beagle. But on the end of Yangpa's tail, because beagles have a long tail, they'd put a heart.
Oh, wow.
They'd shaved a heart. And I was like, oh, no, I'm going to walk down the street. I'm trying to be like macho and impressionable. And my beagle had this little heart tail going
just
along.
Just their taste. They just did that for free.
Just did it for that. But
fantastic.
Little anecdote. But since the late 1990s, there have been a whole host of activism groups coming up. We'll find, for example, Korea Animal Protection and Education Society, Animal Arirang, and these are all working to promote greater awareness amongst the public and also to sort of encourage compassion for animals and to change the conversation, because in modern society we can get so focused on politics, we can get so focused on ourselves, we can get so focused on consumption, all very important. But there have been more groups that are directing the conversation towards animals, because perhaps without them, we might not think about it. We might just go through life consuming these things, the different animals, as you say. And so these groups have been really important.
Yeah, and you're right. Maybe when things start getting difficult, we just put animals on the back burner. We're like, let's focus on the humans. But as you said, we're all like living things. So ethically speaking, I'm sure we have some responsibility. We should have the time to do that. Yeah.
Somebody in the chat mentioned it earlier, but also on Korean television, different television shows, different programs have started doing it. 동물농장, Animal Farm has been one of the ones.
Oh, that's been around for donkey's years. Excuse the pun there.
Absolutely. Yeah, it has been. But this was, it might just seem like a light-hearted piece of entertainment, but it was really important for some people to show animals, to draw attention to issues, to how animals live, how animals interact, what we should be doing with them. And it was something which, put people's focus back onto animals and how we should be living with them, what we can do for them.
Yeah, they sometimes showed some really heartbreaking stories, as well as some heartwarming ones as well, and rehabilitation of the animals. I remember watching that when I first came here, maybe in 2010 or something like that, and it's been bigger and bigger, I think.
Me too, and what I would notice is that they would often put a voice in the animals, like they would narrate. So the dog would be walking down the street and there would be this Korean voice, and they would sort of personify what the dog was thinking.
In Korea, I think celebrities often have a good positive influence when they come out with something that they do that is positive, right? It can prove a good role model for not just the younger generation, but for parents as well. And I think now there are loads of celebrities out there promoting, especially dog ownership. Dogs seem to be head and shoulders above the rest here, I believe.
They do, and we have seen stories with dogs and certain celebrities that have caused trouble, where there have been incidents and even sort of fatalities related to dogs and celebrities. Yes. But you're correct in South Korea that people do look to celebrities sometimes, and they might be singers, actors, entertainers, but they cast a big shadow in terms of values and social roles. We talked about President Moon Jae-in at the start and his love for dogs and how he's trying to change the conversation. Another really important one has been Lee Hyori, and hugely respected.
Yes.
Not just a singer, but a figure in South Korean life. She's a noted vegetarian. She's demonstrated a meatless lifestyle. She was recently on a program wearing a vegan leather jacket.
Oh, wow.
And so she doesn't hide it. She's not afraid of the criticism, because there is this idea when you're in the public light in Korea, as more than other places, I think, that you try to be a little bit apolitical. You try to be a bit neutral. You don't want to be divisive. But there have been some celebrities that have used their platform to show what they believe. And I think Hyori has been really influential in that regard. It's fascinating to see that she'll go around having a vegan, vegetarian lifestyle, having her tattoos, doing her thing, and she's very comfortable in who she is and what she does.
Yeah, she is a great role model also for other celebrities, right? When she pushes the boundaries and talks about certain things she's passionate about, I think the younger celebrities, her hubers, we'd say in Korea, they feel they can work up a bit of courage to say what they believe in certain instances.
I did go through a stage in my articles of kind of comically suggesting that Lee Hyori would be a great South Korean president. Consider running, and if you do, I'd vote for you.
I'm sure a lot of celebrities will be better than our politicians, to be honest. And aside from this, and I don't know how much it is linked, I'd love to see some kind of study done if it's not already been done. The number of vegans and vegetarians surrounding me, or people at least eating on a semi-regular basis vegan and vegetarian meals, is booming in Korea, like for health, I think, but also maybe for the animal rights side.
Well, when you say booming, it's definitely increasing. So I think we might need to do a deeper dive into this topic another week in the future.
Yeah.
According to recent studies, there's about 1.5 million vegetarians and about 500,000 vegans.
Okay, so maybe not as big a proportion as in the West, traditionally.
Which is also noticeable if you look around. There are a few sort of vegetarian shops and things like that, delivery things coming up. But it's nowhere like in the West. If you go down and on the menu, there'll be vegetarian options and things marked, but it's not quite here. I completely agree it's increasing, but it's nowhere near as widespread as other places.
Yeah, you're right. Maybe the biggest boom is like with these salad places I see everywhere, but there's a load of dishes on there that definitely are not vegetarian. They've got like meat products in there galore. And when I brought my friends out here, I think it was for my wedding actually, 2012, I had one couple who's half Muslim and half Hindu, so they can't eat pork and beef between them.
Yep.
We had a real difficult time at that point in Korea's history. We'd go to restaurants and ask for something vegetarian. They'd say, yeah, here you go. And it had like bits of canned ham in there. And I'd be like, is that vegetarian? I'd be like, yeah, I think so. I'm sure it's not.
I have a Hindu friend, Professor Rahul Raj, and the ladies would put a bit of meat in there for him, even though he ordered vegetarian, and be like, no, you need to eat a little bit, just a little bit, it won't hurt you. And so there was that cultural attitude and idea of what a vegetarian is.
Yeah, and I think we're definitely on the road to it now. And I do believe like a lot more, maybe people are being conscious of animal rights in making those decisions in Korea. So we're on the right track.
Going to change your diet, Pete?
I really do want to be
Next week.
vegan just for like the health benefits, just selfishly, but I can't give up the beautiful taste of meat. I'm sorry. David, as ever, thanks for coming in today. We'll see you again next Monday.
See you next week.
You can listen to Monday's segment Now and Then with David Tizard every Monday from 10 a.m. KST on #DailyK.